So out in Montana today, Mr. Obama was out there attacking television, insurance companies, and rich people. Did he do himself any good or not? We're back with Keith Boykin, Jerry Bowyer, Liz Chatterton, and DeRoy Murdoch. Let me just run this little rich people's tax hike segment for 1 second. Take a listen.
I believe in our Constitution, and it's a very important thing. I also get my news from the cable networks because I don't like the spin that comes from them other places.
Oh, you gotta be careful about them cable networks, though. That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
We keep getting the bull. That's all we get is bull. You can't tell us how you're going to pay for this. The only way you're going to get that money is to raise our taxes. You said you wouldn't. You
are absolutely right that I can't cover another 46 million people for free. But let's assume it costs about $30 billion a year over 10 years. We do have to come up with that money. When I was campaigning, I made a promise that I would not raise your taxes if you made $250,000 a year or less. That's what I said. But I said that for people like myself who make more than that, there's nothing wrong with me paying a little bit more in order to help people who've got a little bit less. That was my commitment.
All right, so undoubtedly he's referring to the 5% surcharge on successful earners and the payroll taxes, too. Jerry Bowyer, let me go to you. This is one of those cases where I want to ask, is Mr. Obama being defensive here? I mean, we're already taxing the rich people once by repealing the Bush tax cuts. This would be a second tax cut. Right. He said he wouldn't go above Clinton, but in effect he's going to go above the Clinton tax rate level. We'll get Keith involved in this in just a minute. Is this one of those areas where he looks defensive rather than offensive?
Well, yeah, and this is also one of these areas where he looks pretty mathematically impaired. $30 billion a year? Who believes that? Congressional Budget Office? Any outside consulting firms? The CBO refuses to go below $1 trillion, not $300 billion. And private groups have estimated that it's twice that. So we're just making numbers up. And just, you know, on the surface, let's look at it. We're going to do 50 million people for $30 billion a year. What's that? You know, I mean, that doesn't make any mathematical sense whatsoever. Maybe some of these other panelists can explain the math to me.
I mean, he does say, Keith, he does say, hang on, I can't cover another 46 million people for free. Now, that's kind of a bogus number, that 46 million, but let's not go there. But, Keith, I think when he goes down this road, not only does he repeal his promise of not raising the Clinton tax rates, he also really reopens the issue that folks have known about, that this is a massive budget buster and a massive deficit buster. Aren't you worried about that?
I don't know where to begin, Larry. I mean, first of all, Jerry is completely wrong. What Obama was saying when he mentioned $300 billion wasn't that was the total cost. He recognizes $1 trillion or somewhere in that neighborhood. $300 billion is the amount of money they haven't agreed on. That's what he said. I watched the entire town hall meeting today.
Well, then where do we get the trillion from? I don't know why we're talking about $300 billion when the cost is $1 trillion.
Basically, you have to watch the town hall, but the $700 billion has already been taken care of, basically, from the conversations in the Hill. But let me get back to what Larry was just saying.
I'm sorry. I want the details. It's been taken care of how? Where do we get the trillion?
Let me get back to Larry's question.
Go ahead,
okay.
Keith. Go ahead.
And I do worry about the deficit, but, you know, I think Obama made a good point today that this proposal is paid for, unlike, for example, with President Bush's 2003 Medicare prescription drug bill, which was $600 billion, no plan to pay for it.
But Keith,
they at least are laying out how they're going to pay for it.
But Keith, just like President Bush, the Congressional Budget Office says no. And I think this goes to one of the biggest problems that Mr. Obama has. The Congressional Budget Office, okay, you can call them fishy if you want. Maybe they have to register with the White House web operation. But the reality is they're killing him on this stuff. And instead of talking about his benefits, so-called, for health care reform, he is now caught up in a fiscal debate, which is extremely... Let me go to Liz on this, all right? I'll get your take from the Democratic side. This is a fiscal debate that can only hurt Obama. That's my feeling, Liz.
Well, fiscal debates are always difficult, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Nobody likes talking about the cost of anything. But what's important to recognize here is the $1 trillion is not per year. It is over a series of years. And yes, they have already figured out how to pay for 50 to 70% of it through various and sundry revenue shifts, as well as cost savings from other programs. Yes.
In English, please? What does that mean? Various and sundry revenue shifts? What does that mean?
Maybe you should go read the bills, okay? Because it's all out there.
I can't find anything in this bill that finds $1 trillion. If you can, please show me where.
But DeRoy Murdoch, let me come back and ask you this. When President Obama plays on the fiscal field, as he had to today, and he really had to come back to it again and again, because even this hand-picked audience wants to worry about budget busting and deficit busting and making America broke. DeRoy, doesn't this hurt his whole case?
I think it does. I mean, we're recovering from about $12 trillion we've spent on the bailout, $787 billion of additional stimulus. This omnibus bill is about $400 billion. I mean, this is an enormous amount of money, and $1 trillion over 10 years. If we're lucky, the price will stay there. There's some recent research from the Congressional Joint Economic Committee. They looked at the original Medicare estimates of how much that program would cost. Back in 1967, they said in 1990 we'd spend about $12 billion on Medicare. In fact, we spent 110. They were off by 917%. There's another program that was supposed to spend about $1 billion in 1992 for some poor hospitals with very poor populations. In fact, they spent something like 17. They're off by 1,700%. Very rarely does the government estimate the amount that a program will cost and get it correct. It's
Do you think
much,
Americans
much more.
know that? Do you think American taxpayers understand that, DeRoy?
I'm not sure if they do, but they should be educated on that. It would be one thing if the price tag stayed put, but the price tag, when the government gets involved in brand new activities and new programs, it just goes up, up, and away, and the same thing will happen here. And then good luck trying to get the money together amid all of this to pay for those even more expensive programs. Let me just take this to the next step.
This will be our last round. Jerry Bowyer, start with you.
Yes.
A lot of seniors, elderly over 65, who really oppose this, according to the polls, know darn well that the budget-bustingness of this bill will cut back substantially on their Medicare benefits, which is how they live. And the next question is, if they know that and they're 20 points against this bill, will they rally to elect a Republican Congress in 2010?
They might. But, Larry, you've got it. This is how we bring A block and B block together. The life issues and the end-of-life issues are related to the budget issues, because if you have a government program with free benefits, the only way to, quote-unquote, bend the cost curve is to ration care, and that's generally done for the elderly.
All right, let's whip around. Go ahead, Chief.
Let me just say something.
Chief Boykin, not on the substance. I don't want to get in the weeds. I want to know a political question. If the revolt of the seniors, okay, which seems so apparent from the polls, will that re-elect the GOP Congress in 2010?
No, two things. First of all, the seniors already like government health care because most seniors receive government health care. Medicare is a government program.
The fact that Medicare is not paying for lots and lots of services.
Secondly, the real danger here for the Republicans is they overplay their hands, and you start to see all this raucousness at the town hall meetings with the members of Congress, and people are going to have, there's going to be a backlash against that, and people are not going to be happy, and the Republicans are going to get hit in the head.
So far, the only backlash I see is running against this thing. But Liz Chatterton, Liz, in honor of your coming on our show, I want to give you the last word. Will seniors propel the GOP to victory in 2010 because of their dissent from this plan?
Absolutely not. Democrats will remain in control in 2010. No question.
They're not in control now.
All right.
GOP's got a random shot to come out and talk about this
Friday evening. Keith Boykin, Jerry Bowyer, Liz Chatterton, welcome to the show. DeRoy Murdoch, great to see you again. Coming up in the Kudlow Report, what is wrong with a short-term pullback? I call them great buying opportunities. We have a couple of heavyweight investors to tell you how to play it. We actually had some pretty good economic news today. No inflation, stronger growth in production. It could be a turning point. The recession is over, the recovery begins, and the Kudlow Report has much more work to do.